we go.
Good afternoon. Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome back to another Take a Knee Tuesday with our friends from Blue Water Advisors, led by the one, the only Captain Retired Mike Wallace. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, good, Scott. Thanks for that. For the viewers out there, you can see Scott's revamping his office. But I was kidding with him just a minute ago. If he gets tired of what Jake and I, are talking about, he can just jump right back into continuing his workout in the back. So it's smart planning, Scott. It's good.
No. It's actually so I can get off the ground. I got to pull myself up because.
Whatever you need it for, right? Whatever you need.
I set these things up. I don't use them. It's funny. I go to the gym, but anyway.
Well, hey, before I forget, to both you guys, right? Merry Christmas. I know we're so daggone busy, right? We're wrapping up, or we're going to be wrapping up this week. We're already almost midway through this week, and it's quickly approaching. So if I don't get a chance to see you both, I just want to wish you Merry Christmas, and to the viewers out there as well, too. Merry Christmas, right? Don't forget to take time off, enjoy friends, family. That's what it's all about, right? We all get so consumed. It's easy to kind of miss this if you're not careful. So, hey, Scott, if I could just jump in real quick, I just want to introduce Jake Johnson. Jake is a retired Navy SEAL. He was a Blue Water participant in our cohort. And I went back and looked it up again, Jake. It was July. So it's over a year and a half ago, right? It was July of 2022. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and stepped through the process. And, I told him on several occasions, he gets the gold star, right? I mean, there are some members that will come through and absorb the message and, kind of navigate lightly with it. I mean, Jake just right away saw, clarity in the, in the way we, kind of talk about how to make, your next pursuit and your next vision turn into reality. And he embraced it, man. He's put his shoulder hard into it. And that's really part of what we want to talk about today, right? The financial industry. And although Jake landed not in the financial industry, he did spend a fair amount of time pursuing one of the larger conglomerates that are out there, right? And he's got a lot of insight as we get into it on kind of what he learned along the way. And I know, Scott, you've got some insight in the financial industry and really just shedding some light, because we do have members come through and they say, Mike, I want to get into financial advising, and this is kind of what I want to do, and I got to call into this. And for a lot of members, they've kind of dabbled in it as a hobby a little bit, and they think they just want to jump into this and turn this into a career. And I'm not saying that you can't do that, right? You absolutely can do that. There are people that find success with it. But again, I think just for all of us here today, right, we'll just tease out some of those insights and some of the maybe lesser known facts. Scott, I know you've done a little bit, and then Jake, some of your own experiences as you pursued this path as well.
Yeah.
Put that out. So, but anyway, Jake, welcome. I know, you've landed. I think I can say the company you're landed with, right? I mean, Skydio. It's a great company out there, and but I know you spent some time in your career progression pursuing the financial industry before you looked at that. So I guess we can kick it off there. Scott, do you got anything else you want to add before we jump into it, or what?
No, I think this is just a great opportunity to kind of have the conversation. Jake, I'd just love to hear you share maybe your few years before retirement, kind of what when did you start thinking, knowing where you ended up now. Let's just caveat that if you were still, let's say you were back in your shoes back then and you were considering it, like, how did it come up, and what was your general thoughts and plan around that?
So I think I was kind of shotgunned into retirement decision a little bit. It kind of just all came as like a big wave, and it was very clear to me that hey, I was gonna retire and leave service. So and I think that was really close to around when I signed up for Blue Water. I would say 60, from like decision to retire to like jumping into a cohort, it was probably about 60 days. So I think if I understand your question, you're asking of considering financial industry, like the financial services industry. So almost right out of the gate, I was pursuing financial services because I had a friend of mine who I grew up with playing hockey with, who was in
That's
the
right.
industry, he was a former pro hockey player. He likes all the kind of stuff I like. He likes to golf. He likes hockey, obviously. He's from my neck of the woods. So like all those factors of where I knew that he was enjoying his life, that I knew I thought that that was going to be the right landing spot for me. So that's kind of how it transpired. I would say a year and a half out from retirement is really when I
It was
started
kind of
looking
a
for.
networking thing, right? You knew this guy. You were having conversations with him. He was having fun with it. It looked like a good fit for him. You guys started having this conversation kind of through networking, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then he had reached out to me like maybe about 6 years earlier, and
Oh,
just said, hey, look, it's been a while. You've been deploying, you've been doing things, but I was actually in San Diego at the time, and he said, hey, I want let's go have dinner, let's catch up, let's do. I'll tell you, I just got this job, and this was actually when he got it. Wasn't thinking I still had 7 more years of service
yeah.
left at that point. So I'm just like, hey, glad you're doing good. You know, thanks for dinner, and then kind of went on my way, and it kept touching bases with him, and it's just a good friendship, really.
Okay. And so, so you were gonna work with your friend?
Not like direct report, but just
Gotcha.
more in yeah. He was kind of my in.
Okay, well, that's a different story from what often happens is let's just put a job fair scenario out there, and you got the Boeings, the Raytheons, and other the Amazons and the Google booth there, and then there's a financial services firm. And from my perspective, when I was coming out, I got recruited by a very, very small firm, not a big corporation. So I kind of knew right away that this was self-employment, like off the bat. Um, and so I was getting at is you go from the Raytheon booth to the financial services company booth, and it's like, oh yeah, we have jobs, but I don't perceive it as a quote unquote salaried job. But different firms do it differently. They have different offers. What was your comfort level in potential? Or what was the opportunities for salary slash other sources of compensation? Because that's where things get confusing in the financial industry. It's not just
And I
a
think just
weekly
just to
paycheck.
tee up the discussion, I think Jake, you and I would agree. Your pursuit in that financial industry was one of the bigger ones, right? I mean, this is a
Yeah,
this is a large
very large.
company. So, but it's a fair ask, right? I mean, is your compensation going to be based on you're going to eat what you kill kind of thing, in the BD world, or does a company like that have enough to take you into what's called overhead? Are they going to pay you for 5-6 months until you get ramped up and build your clientele, and then they start kind of pulling that back? What did you learn? Did you get any insight into what the compensation structure looked like? And
Well, so
not just
yeah,
about compensation, but I know you
yeah.
pursued these guys for a
That's
while.
just the main difference that I
Yeah.
bring up. It's like not, just not having that monthly LES coming in, on a steady basis. It's a new
Yeah.
world if you're not ready for it.
Yeah, and I think some of the things that went into my calculus of picking a job was compensation. Like it definitely was.
Sure.
I'd be lying to you to say that wasn't at the forefront of my brain. Now looking back, I think I should have considered some other things outside of that. Of just like, hey, how much can I make? Coming off the LES, like the government's giving you just that amount to say you can provide for your family and you can be okay, right? And then I wanted to kind of break away from that. So on the compensation side and what we were actually talking about, so the way it works is well, let me rewind a little bit. I also knew that I wanted to be in some sort of sales capacity. A lot of people really don't like it, but
Yeah, interesting.
I like talking to people. I like understanding what problems they may be having. And I also like helping people. So that actually does fall into the sales space. If you know who you are and I know who I am, and if I can provide a solution and help somebody, it's like a win-win. So it's like, it's like stacking wins on wins. So like I got a sale, I helped them, I helped me. It's like, it just builds, and it's, and I'm like, man, that's what I want, because I get that gratification of it. So so from a sales standpoint and in the financial services, I'm not an expert. I didn't get hired. I didn't go that way. But the regions in which they break everything up. So they'll have these guys that are, out away from the firms and in geographical areas of the United States that's broken up. And they could have, depending on the economy, they could have 50 of these guys, they could have 20, and then the regions and the lines and the borders of who controls what territory is constantly changing. And when you want to get in there is when they're mixing up, when those regions are coming. So hopefully the economy is in a growing thing. They're going to divvy up some areas of the United States. It happens to hopefully land in an area where you want to live. And then going back to kind of what you were saying, Mike, is whether or not you need to build up your book of business. You don't really need to build up your book of business, because the people that are living in that area are going to be buying those products no matter what. You're just the guy, the face of the company, to make sure that they're still happy with the types of products you're delivering. Yeah. So I was like, okay, that is exactly where I want to be landing. I don't have to like just, start, going, doing driveway calls and, and like trying to figure out how I'm going to make this done with zero experience. Like
you're getting me motivated, man. I just listening to you. I'm getting excited. I'm ready to make a transition. I'm ready to jump into it, man.
Let's go. Yeah. So that's kind of how it works. It was very low on the salary side, very low. Like, I don't need to throw numbers or whatever, but pretty low on the salary side, but super high on the upside when they start. It depending on what your firm and all these different firms. And I met with other different firms, like some of them that are really specialized in municipal bond funds, and the other ones that are, specialized in those ones. So each ones have their unique market, but just like everything, these larger ones are really scooping up the majority of the market. Actually, I ended up talking with, Vivek Ramaswamy running for president. I was talking with Strive. Strive is his company, and that's the anti-ESG side of everything as well. So because like a lot of the bigger ones were kind of jumping on board with the ESG stuff, and they're like, yeah, ESG, this and that. Vivek broke off. It's like, negative. We are zero ESG. This is all BS. It's all a bunch of crap. We're gonna start doing it this way. But long story short is that I knew I could get in front of people and be able to build a relationship that is bounded on my core values and the core values that I took from service, and I could apply it directly and immediately and have impact. I knew I would be successful, but that wasn't the problem of getting over the hurdle into that type of market.
So that's a good segue. And Scott, let me just fill in, like, talk about, like, Jake put his shoulder into this thing. I mean, Jake, you were pursuing certifications, you were doing training, you were doing, pursuit of a lot of, what I would say, prerequisite or requirements, right? In anticipation that you were going to land here. Talk to us about that just briefly. I mean, I can remember having these conversations. You did this. It was legit heavy lifting.
Yeah. And it was out of good faith. They're like, hey, it'd be a really good idea if you got on top of this, you'd put your name a little bit higher on the stack. And I'm like, done,
Yeah.
I got all the books. I got all the stuff. I'm studying 24/7, 365 every day, taking practice tests, studying stuff online, watching videos, learning everything I could possibly learn. Crash course, took all the tests, passed all the tests. Doesn't matter, at the end of the day.
Well, no, I think it does matter, because like now you have certifications and that experience that, this is my next question, kind of from the whole self-employment standpoint. The industry average of people making it past year 2 to 3 as a quote unquote financial advisor, kind of at all levels.
What is it?
Do you have a guess?
Yeah,
80.
no, I don't know. Let me guess. No, let me guess.
80%.
Is it? What did you say, Jake? 40%?
80. 80% attrition.
Yeah.
It's like attrition.
Attrition. Yeah.
So you're telling me only 20% of the people that pursue this are successful.
Some are even higher.
Right. I would say, I was going to say 5%.
Oh
and
my gosh.
Well, that's, because you got to understand success in the financial industry. The ones who, keep it going year after year, are kind of, getting by month to month, if we're being brutally honest, because it's a hard competition out there. And these firms, where do they get their clients from? The other firms. And so that becomes a thing. So that's what Jake was going into, the big corporation who's got a brand and you can bring in business and obviously has repeat business, and they can have the junior guys kind of come in and learn as they go, because there's plenty of senior guys around. Yet some of the big name firms set up as a kind of corner office, even though they have offices everywhere. In those offices, you could be the new guy, or you could be the guy who's been there a while. That is more or less 100, kind of eat where you can. You can still get the brand name sometimes, but sometimes it's a small firm that is just, their own, local company or whatever. Yeah, and in that regard,
my head is still hurting back to the, 80% attrition, 20% success in this. Is that, I mean, Jake, did you see a little bit of that when you were running?
Oh, yeah. I talked to everybody. I was talking with some of the best financial advisors, sitting down with them, having meetings with them. I'm like, how many people last? They're like, pretty much nobody. Cause these are the guys with the big books. They got they got all the accounts. They're saying, once you get to that point, like, hell yeah, being an FA is awesome. But I'm coming off the tail end of a 23-year military career, and I can't go back to seaman apprentice. Actually, I was an airman apprentice, but I can't go back to that. I can't, there's no going backwards, that far back, and I couldn't swallow that pill.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so both of you guys help me out here. So somebody approaches Blue Water and somebody says, "Hey, Mike, I've been dabbling in this. I really enjoy it. I think I'm kind of good at it. I enjoy the financial advising aspect of it. I got a sister-in-law who does this, and man, I'm good with, it's like, I want to pursue this. I think I can do this." What do we share with them? What do you tell them?
How are you planning to prospect for clients and own it as an entrepreneur when it doesn't work out? And own it when it does work out, without, the first thing you got to do is talk to friends and family. That's what they usually tell you to do. Make a list of 200 people that you can call. And I didn't like doing that, so I would pay MWR $3,000 to go stand at a USO golf tournament. I'd stand on the first hole with a gift certificate giveaway. I'd sit there all day begging for people to come over to my little booth, and I get a few names, and I'd have to call them up. And I was not like Jake. I didn't even realize I was in sales for a couple years. And, I wanted to give financial advice, retirement planning. And once is when I realized I was in sales that I said, oh, it's not that I need to just offer services, because that's what a lot of these firms do. We kind of do everything for everybody. We're comprehensive financial planning, which is, of course, great if you've got a team for it. But if you're the new guy, or sometimes even with a lot of experience, you can only do so much. And once you realize you got to make sales to bring that paycheck in, the trick is, I went to a conference once, and I had a guy gave a speech, and he said, "Serve only those whom you are meant to serve, and nobody else." And that's when I started to kind of narrow things in, obviously, but it took me years. On the flip side, I've seen guys probably like Jake who are just like chat some people up, love the personality, and it kind of works a lot easier. But then the opportunity is, the smaller the firm, the bigger the cut that you can get. Less support, less overhead potentially. Like, I'm working in my garage. I got my laptop. That's my, obviously anything software I buy and stuff like that. But I don't have to pay. I'm not required to have a secretary or an office, for that matter. Sometimes these things kind of get dropped out, and that comes out of your pocket, essentially. It's not, even though the firm has an office downtown, chances are you're gonna have to pay for your portion of that.
Yeah, it sounds like, and Jake, you've got a great personality for this, right? I mean, there's no doubt, I know enough about you that if you would have got your foot in the door, you would have just tore it up. I mean, that's just who you are, and you've got a great network and a great following. And to Scott's point, serve those whom you are meant to serve, kind of thing. Well, you had a pipeline of people that you were going to reach back and say, hey, I can help you make this, this an easy transition, right? So it's like,
yeah, I think like sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. And I think the part that I was super naive about, which is those contexts, because I was also having meetings with some pretty influential financial people, and I thought that, I'll put it this way: I had no business being on a call with them because I had no financial experience whatsoever, but they were willing to give me 45 an hour of their time, and I'm in the B word, type of financial industry side, and they're running the place. And I'm like, hey, I hit it off with this guy, I'm good. So like and people were like, you got, people are throwing good word. Yeah. So like on the network side, I did everything. I don't think there's one leaf that I could have turned over differently on the networking side to make that a success. I remember
you were having a lot of legit conversations, right? I remember now.
And so I would just tell people, is like, don't be fooled by who you're talking to and when you're talking to them, because at the end of the day, like they're running a business. They need to be able to justify to everybody else on why they're bringing you in. And then the other part about not only bringing you in, why are we bringing this guy in? Is he going to do better than I am? So like, have no mistake that they other people, they're like, yeah, I heard the boss talked with retired Navy SEAL, and he's tall, dark, and handsome, really likes to talk and whatever, and then they're like, yeah, negative. You're not, like, I know these guys are going, hey, I've been at this company for 20 years. You're gonna shit can me, that's what's gonna happen. And so like there's a middle level of that networking that if you didn't attack it from all levels and had like your approaches there, it's just really hard to be able to do it coming out of service in some aspects.
Jake, if you would have landed with this company, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of different models, but would you have stepped in and somebody on your team or your direct report, would they have given you some clients to manage, or would they have said, welcome aboard, hit the bricks and talk to me at the end of the week and let me know who you got coming in, or is it a little bit of both? Right. I mean,
so the way this would have worked, you do like an onboarding, pretty short and sweet, nothing too crazy. Do an onboarding. You go home wherever you're living. You have your area. You get a full list of every single major financial advisor in your area. All those financial advisors they're going to rank them number 1 to number 0, and that's based on the products that they're buying from your firm. Those products that they're buying from your firm, if they're up at the top, they're like, hey, Joe Schmo is buying a ton. He's got to be your focus. You got to stay in his hip pocket, make sure he's happy, keep it, they're like, give him a call. He's your first phone call, and be like, hey, I'm the new guy in town. How are you?
You had a little bit of a roadmap, right? You kind of knew where you were gonna,
And then he can, and then he's like, all right, I got the new guy from, X firm. He's calling me up now. He may give you some time in the day, may shove you off, at the beginning. Who knows? I think but that battleground is kind of what I was like, oh, I like that. I like this. All right, I got, and someone told me this, and it's actually my buddy. He goes, the way I looked at my list, he's like, I want to make number 50 number 1, because if he's if he's 50, he's also number 1, and then it's not only number 1 for us, it's actually he's number 1 at his firm. So he's like, so he kind of like, you're helping. It's like a mutual thing, kind of going up. I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah,
but
Because Mike, you understand all the supervisors, there's just layers and layers, and it goes beyond the firm. It depends on the size of the firm. Sometimes the firms have their own products.
Yeah.
But if the firm's smaller, then they're brokering everything. And that's how all these management fees and stuff kind of get, everybody takes a little cut. That's why a new guy, his payout percentage might only be 30 or 40%.
Yeah.
Like when I started a smaller firm, I had zero, firm lead. We were all at the same firm and we do events together, but we were competing, unless we were under this. It was very confusing. So,
Jake, I can remember you and I having conversations. I mean, you guys probably remember back, part of the Blue Water cohort, right, is we tell people, hey, look before you jump, right? It doesn't mean that I don't think it's a great industry or a great company or something. I said, look before you jump, right? In other words, if a company's going through a major reorg, we've had people that wanted to step into the IT world, wanted to go to Facebook or Meta or whatever. And I'm going, hey, did you just see they laid off 15,000 people?
Yeah.
This may not be the best time. I'm not saying pursue them. I'm saying it's a great job, but you may need to get in the right headspace because I'm going to have to increase my time, right? Yeah. And Jake, I remember you and I taking a look at, hey, what is the economy? What's the state of the economy? I can remember you and I had this. And are these companies just pursuing people to kind of have a backstop in place that when it starts to get hot again, and they could pull people in? So Scott, like, what do you see? Like, the economy has to have effect on this. And I know your client is maybe a little bit different, Scott. So maybe maybe the economy doesn't have such effect.
No, it does. It 100% does. Because the year I entered the financial industry, in fact, the day I, was starting my terminal leave, I put a new suit on I bought at the PX, and I showed up at this guy's office. He was a certified financial planner, 30 years experience. Like, that week is when Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008. And I said, who's Lehman Brothers? I didn't know. I didn't know none of this stuff, and nobody does. The licensing and the that stuff's about compliance, just making sure you're not lying to people, that kind of stuff. And so what happened is, I mean, the reason this guy brought me aboard is because he had not been out prospecting for new clients. We thought young blood, obvious thing, and we were over in Stuttgart, Germany, so very captive kind of audience and stuff, but. So he hadn't been getting new clients, and basically his existing clients started calling up, freaking out. The market's crashing, and blaming him. And, I at least knew at that time, like, well, the market's just going to do what it's doing. Yeah, sure. One money manager can do different than the other. And then the money managers that we had brokered to, everybody's sending out all the reports and and so he started losing clients. And so from day one, I just had this shock, and we didn't make any money for 2 years. So I ended up just leaving it. And that's what forced me to go completely on my own.
Yeah.
I said, I was still with the firm, but I said, there's no teamwork here, and nobody knows what they're doing anyways. It didn't matter the experience, and the clients are all jumping ship just based on emotions. And so it took me years to kind of, figure it out. But that's why I stayed on this insurance side of things. I was like, I want to focus on safe money versus trying to beat somebody else's stock portfolio. I can't do that. I can't guess. There's no.
I mean, I think a little bit though, Scott, right? I mean, I look at, like, and Jake, our Blue Water member, like, typically, who we are analytically, right? 05s, 06s. Yeah. That's about 80 some odd % of our membership that kind of steps through. And we've got a few other percentages on either side of that bell curve, but guys and gals are gonna step out, right? When it's time to depart, they're gonna depart. Whether it's a good economy, a bad economy, it doesn't matter, right? And so and maybe wrongfully so, but I think that the economy would have less effect on that pipeline of people having conversations with you initially. But maybe I've got it all wrong.
It can help in the beginning because someone's looking for a new conversation.
Yeah, I guess, right? Yeah.
And it's, so it's, no right or wrong. It's just kind of is the way. Jake, I wanted to ask you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you kind of, since you did land, somewhere else, my perspective, having gone straight from the military into self-employment, was, boy, I wish I had a pension. First, I thought, as long as I had a pension, this would have been simpler. And I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore. for a lot of people who just get out, want to start a business and go all in. And I'm kind of thinking, no, go get that corporate gig, get your feet wet, get that steady paycheck for a few years. The cool thing, you can actually do the financial stuff on the side.
Yeah.
Once you have the license, you got the license. You don't have to go with the big firm that requires your full time, 40 hours a week, more like 80 hours a week. But there's other.
Jake, Scott, Jake, you guys connected now. Jake, or you can put all your previous,
well, that's where that's where it gets
certifications attained to work right on the weekend.
Well,
right?
essentially, Mike, that's a good point. Essentially, what it is franchising. When you is the difference between buying into a franchise versus starting your own version of a similar type of service, right? And I'm thinking, for those who want to go the more like the independent route, where you can totally control your time, hours, and how you operate, I think definitely going the corporate route for a few years, at least now in these times, allows for just more dust to sell, to keep it easy.
Yeah.
Jake, I want to know your thoughts on that based on kind of how you landed. You can always get back into it, as Mike said.
Yeah. So I think it depends. I agree with you because, hey, certification's good for 4 years. So, it's not a complete lost cause.
Yeah.
You 100%, like you said, I think that you could have some time. You're a little more versed in the FA world, but like you can 100% do something more like that on your own. But what I would say is that finding out what you're good at, and everybody that's leaving the military already knows, because guess what? You did evals and fit reps and you did it, and they told you to your face what you're good at and what you're not. And they did it every freaking year for 23 years. Okay. So when you leave, you should know and have a good idea, and if you still don't have a good idea of what you're good at, then you definitely ask your last 3 bosses. So that now take that and go into corporate world and build a badass corporate bullet on your resume that's going to launch you into whatever it is you're going to do next. Yeah. Because for me, I was like, yeah, well, I knew I want to sell. Okay, I want to sell. All right, I want to sell financial stuff because I can make more money. Okay, cool. But the problem there is that I'm only meeting that one bullet that was maybe even going to get me over that hump in the sales side. So like, oh, what do you know about the stock market? What do you know about the history of products, ETFs? Whatever. And everybody just starts talking about all these different things. That's where I'm falling short. But you can gain that experience, but it's better to go get your foot in the door of somewhere else. Like, just like Mike was talking about, I'm super happy to be able to start a company right now because it's everything that I wanted. It's
I just got to tell everybody, when I look at some of Jake's postings and some of the stuff that the company does there, Jake, it looks just so super cool, right? You guys are plugged into some really meaningful, gratifying, use of technology in some pretty neat spaces, right? And so it's got to be really cool. I'm so happy. It looks like a great fit for you.
Yeah, and it's funny too because I probably couldn't tell you what an IPO was, or or anything. And then and then now I'm like reading stuff with the company and talking to people. I'm like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah, there you go. It could be life-changing, big game changer. Hey, before we get too much time away from us here, Scott, why don't you tell us about, just real quick, can you give us a teaser? Jake, I don't know if you know, Scott is a prolific writer, right? And he's primarily focused on survivor benefit plan, but he recently just finished his book. And Scott, I am reading the link, so just give me another day or so. I'll get through it.
No worries.
On thrift savings plan, right? And because that is important to a lot of our members that step out, not only how to navigate that conversation around survivor benefit plan, should I, shouldn't I? Let's have the mathematical conversation, and Scott does that very well. But now also in and around your thrift savings plan. So give us a teaser on that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a culmination of everything going back to that 2008 experience I had with the market crashing and kind of people freaking out. And at the time, one of the few clients I got was a good friend of mine. She had hurt herself skiing, and was in the hospital. And so since I wasn't getting any clients, I had been, just sitting in that office all day, just looking at financial planning websites and signing up for newsletters. And, we didn't know we were supposed to go out and meet people. I thought I was supposed to learn more financial planning stuff. But that I stumbled into a book called Tax-Free Retirement. And I was like, okay, sounds good. What's this? So I read the book, and the guy in the book says, just hand this to your clients. And there's a lot of people who write books kind of like that. And I was, desperate at the time. My friend was in the hospital, and so I handed her the book. She had nothing to do, and she came back to me and goes, this makes sense. I'd like to do this. And I got off the phone with her last week. This is 14 years later.
Wow.
And she had basically the strategy I outline in the first book, Don't Forget Your War Chest. She had done that way back then. So now she's got $100,000 in an account that she can access. And at retirement, already with the insurance in place, doesn't have to worry about survivor benefit plan. And that was the whole strategy. Just build a war chest. And the cool thing is she doesn't have to wait to use that money. She can use it right now if she wants to.
Yeah.
And so, that was a cool story. And what that, led me to was, recognizing that, when we're doing financial planning, when we're on active duty in the military, we're told to save for retirement, but it's the wrong retirement. The real retirement is at, age 40, 50. So, we're still young. We're going to have a whole nother career. And, how often do I see retirees who are very wealthy on paper, but cash poor because they got a huge pension, huge TSP, and, kids in college or stuff, not a whole lot of cash flow. And that's part of the reason why, well, shit, I got to go get that job. Mike Wallace.
So you're saying they just can't access any of it, right?
I mean, lack of access. And then, of course, more years of turmoil come on. People start not liking their accounts going down. And it's like, what do you do it? Well, you insure it. So, I wrote the book. Our big thing was SBP, and I didn't have, the story for the longest time around, this discussion around, alternative ways to consider managing your thrift savings plan as a high income earner. And what do I mean by high income earner is you're retiring out of the military, you're getting a good pension. You're now all of a sudden make $250 plus a year. Like the majority of the financial planning was, how much can you sacrifice each month to save 20%, something you can touch maybe 40 years later, assuming it all works out. Before the iPhone was invented, was when most people invested most of their money. And so the world's just changed. I mean, there's new technology in the financial industry too. Problem is a lot of these, especially even the bigger corporations, they're making their money. And so the innovation, one, it becomes very difficult with regulations and compliance and stuff. So, there isn't a whole lot of movement in the big firms. It's it all depends. Everybody's kind of, customizing stuff. And so, as I've been specializing down, I realized, well, I don't have to be a financial advisor. I don't want to be an advisor. I don't like the idea of giving people advice and telling them what you should do with your money. It's your money. You do what you want. Tell me where you need help and we'll consult you on it. And so, for those that kind of fit that profile, I got $500,000 in my TSP. The market just dropped by 10%. I was in the C fund, even a life cycle fund. It's still going to take a big hit. Now that movement, when it used to be 5,000 when you were a JO, if a little dip happened, is now 50,000, 100,000. And I'm not going to touch it for 20 years. So it'll come back up. At some point, people don't like that anymore. And since there's a ways of insuring, just like you can insure your life, you can insure your income. And that's what annuities are. Annuities are a life insurance product. And people just don't know how they work or misunderstand or just heard, marketing media stuff from 20 years ago. And so it's like, well, let's decipher it, explain what's actually happening. And, obviously, if you want to talk to us about it, that's what we wrote the book for. But
I like what you said, though, and it's so true, right? For guys like Jake or myself or whatever, when we approach you going, hey, you're saving, you're planning for the wrong retirement. Yeah, this is a retirement, right? But how many people do we know that? I'm saying that there are some people that get out of the military and just don't do anything.
Yeah.
But man, if you're 48, 49, 53, 50, whatever, people go, hey man, I got some runway left here. In fact, I have a desire. I want to do something. That's great earning
Mike,
potential.
you know what we need to do? We need to coin a new phrase, because this is all about language. Remember, I was a Portuguese major. I wasn't planning to get into finance, but I started to pay
Not a
attention
transition, it's a progression, right? Career
right.
progression.
Military transition process. Those words are very, negative. They're not moving forward. Just like retirement, military retirement, guys thinking I'm done, but I'm not.
You're not.
Let's call it the military runway or something like that. And just be honest, it's like you're not retired yet. I mean, some guys do; they fully retire. Got it. That's awesome.
All right, so hang on. Let me focus because we're running a little bit long here. So
sure.
I want your top 2 things. Somebody comes to me and says, Mike, I'm really interested in pursuing the financial industry. Oh, by the way, don't think I'm not going to try to connect them with both of you guys, because I absolutely will. But what would be top 2 on your list that I would want to tell them? Jake, what would you have me prime this conversation with? I'd tell this individual what?
Network. I mean, the importance of network, not only just at the top, every layer of networking within that industry that you're trying to pursue. Obviously, the financial services is very diverse. So, any particular area that you're trying to pursue in that area, network from top to bottom. And then I say the number 2, have an alternative. Have something else that you're pursuing. Like something that that you're really good at. Like I was talking about before, something that really fits your mold. Pursue that industry as well, and pursue it with just as much vigor as you did the financial services side.
That's good insight. Okay, Scott, what else?
I would say, unless you're a few years on active duty still and you can do this on the side, I would say pursue your alternative first and do this on the side, to get your kind of feet wet. The other thing is, in that time frame, wherever you're at, if you're considering financial services in one way or the other, it's time to build your talent stack of communication skills. And the interpersonal skills, if you got those naturally, that's great. But in this world, I mean, look what we're doing right now. The reality is a lot of the competition, and that's what it is. Just like when you're going for a job, you got competition, right? They are oftentimes not able to do their own versions of online, marketing, social media and stuff. And so the better you can learn, these skill sets, then better chance you're going to stand out. And that's essentially, what I did. Just like I gave that book to that client years ago, I always said, well, why don't I just write my own book? And that it took me years of.
It only took you 14 years, Scott. Come on.
Yeah, right. I mean, just trying and getting over the imposter syndrome of like, who's going to want to read this? And sure, I get people saying that's, I don't like what you wrote there. And it's like,
people like that, right? Like you and I talked about this last week, right? I mean,
and that's fine. And again, that's fine. I'm not trying to convince anybody anymore. And that's what I didn't like before. The pressure I had from the firm was to go convince people they need our stuff. And it's like, I'd rather be useful for someone who understands what their problem is, or is trying to understand what their problem is, and solve. As Jake said from the very beginning, we just want to solve problems. And again, because of that attrition rate, it doesn't always get this way, but it can get pretty cutthroat pretty fast. But if you like that environment, Navy SEALs, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Like as far as cutthroat, like they're operating off a completely different standard than I am. None of us were ever motivated by money for our service. We did it because we wanted to serve. We raised our hand. We signed on the line. We went forward. We sacrificed things at home. We did that for not money. I tell you that. And so when that paradigm shifts and the entire industry that you're trying to go into is not motivated by those same moral and ethical guidelines, there is conflict immediately out of the gate. And you can see it if you're a human being at all. And so like when I went into that and I briefed a guy, he's the head of US distribution, a very, very large firm. And I briefed him and I said, you know what, the number one thing that I think that you guys should be doing is empathy. And he was like, what in the fuck are you talking about?
It was really just a foreign thought to him and he hadn't even considered it.
He's like, it's like, sell this crap get it out. Anybody who's doing bad at selling it, fire them. Kill those people. This guy's a SEAL. He likes to kill shit. Let's bring him in here.
Oh my gosh.
This is my experience, but so I think keep that in the back of your head from military members that are going there. You're going into a savage world that people do not give a crap about you.
This is part of look before you jump, right? I mean, understand the industry and the environment that you're getting ready to step into. So this is huge.
It's all about money.
I don't want to drag us too long on time, Scott.
No, absolutely. No, this is great, Jake. Really appreciate you you coming and sharing your really honest thoughts. Awesome.
Love the discussion.
Hey, I will put a plug for Blue Water.
Yeah, please do.
Mike, you guys got absolutely awesome job. I love being part of the Blue Water team. I think that the mission is very important. I think it will only grow from here. And I think just like you were saying, like having that ability to reach out to people. And Mike, I still remember when you first looked me right in the face, you're like, hey man, I got your back. Let's go through this. Let's get this done. Yeah. And I remember it, and I will continue to push people your guys' way and have anybody that wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk to them.
Hey. Well, that's exactly what this is about, right? It's like, hey, it worked for you, Jake. The whole network and experience, you're landed, great experience base. You're just building on it. There will be somebody tomorrow who needs to have that conversation, right? Yeah. And so
absolutely
kudos to both you guys for your willingness to kind of continue to support those individuals in need. So it's what it's all about. Love it.
Thanks. You got Steve chimed in. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate a good talk. And Mike, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. We got a office call tomorrow, but hey, listen, Merry Christmas, you guys.
Merry Christmas.
Please enjoy it, right? Be safe over the holidays, and we'll look forward to talking again soon. Cheers.
All right.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Yeah. Later, guys.